Welcome everyone to this episode of your Freedom Hub's Free Market Cash Patient webinar. I'm your host, Jeff Cantor, along with my co-host, Charles Froman. We are most definitely sponsored by the Marketplace for Health, Wealth, and Freedom, and we want to encourage you to check that out. We are the disruptors intersection for sure, where we're getting all these entrepreneurs and activists together to try to make some change here. So we're going to make tonight no exception to that rule. In case you hadn't noticed, there's a problem. And pretty much everybody started to figure out what this problem is and how we need to start to work around it. And that's kind of what everybody that tends to gravitate to this call is oriented around, is how do we solve it? Are we going to rely on our experts, or who are we going to pay attention to? And is everybody just going to comply, or are we going to think for ourselves? That's a big important stuff too. We can't let fear become the operative statement for what we do. One of the key things we want to do is to facilitate activity. And so in this instance, we're definitely working with a fantastic app that allows consumers and doctors connect directly, bypassing that issue we were talking about a second ago, and letting doctors get paid what they deserve and patients paying for it without having to get it all marked up because there's some third party trying to get paid in the middle. We've got a special site set aside for you to go there and learn all about it. Great little videos to check out. I think you'll find it to be pretty valuable. As I did indicate, we are on a single great website. We have two addresses to get to the same place. Let's take a fast detour. There's some great stuff. You'll see there's a lot of good drop downs and interesting stuff, but just to focus a little briefly here, under this first tab is webinars. That's tonight. And then there's also continuing the conversation. That's important because after the webinar is over, it just begins your involvement in that. So this instance, you're going to come to this page, and here you're going to be able to connect with any of the guests of the past to be able to participate in their activities and help further those causes that are near and dear to you too. Now, we also feature under the freedom section, another important area. These are organizations that are fighting for your freedom. We lead off with issues and actions that you need to actually take advantage of. And sadly, you need to take advantage of all of these, not just one or the other. That's how much things there are to address. But then we share all these different organizations so you can become familiarized with who else is out there you might not have known about. Now, as I said, when you get over this tab and you hover and you see webinars, when you click there, it takes you to this page, which is where we are today. So it gives you a little breakdown on it. And then it shows you who the guest is of the week for both the 4 o'clock and the one we're doing now, the 7 o'clock. Scrolling down a little further, you'll see who are the upcoming guests. And then very importantly, you come down here and you'll see all the links to see this video, which will be posted by Monday on all 4 of these channels. So if we click as an example on the Brighteon one here, it takes you over here, and lo and behold, there's a whole slew of them. And this is where you can watch the video and then continue the conversation as I indicated before. And boy, I'll tell you, there's some fantastic stuff here. And some of it's, a year old, 5 months old, it doesn't matter. The bulk of this stuff, it's still a problem and it's still something you need to learn about. And they're all very, very engaging for sure. So on that note, let's shift over to the guest of today. And this is where I'm going to let Charles take over and do a little introduction for us here.
For sure, Jeff, and welcome, Nelson. Nelson, for those in the health group benefits community, is the host of the renowned Ascend conference, which Jeff and I learned about through that cash appointments app Jeff advertised earlier, which got the Technology Innovation Award at the Ascend conference a year ago or so. Time is a little difficult to tell these days because we're all locked down during this year-long COVID hysteria. So time is a little bit warped for me. I don't know about you. But the benefit costs continue to increase for most employers. So brokers of Nelson's quality continue to be in demand for their advice, and the best and most aggressive brokers do like to attend his conference. And I'm sure Nelson will discuss Ascend a lot. The idea is employers, if they're complaining about incessant annual price increases, well, they have to stop doing the same thing, which is just hiring an insurance company to control all their benefits, whether it's Blue Cross, United, Cigna, Aetna, Humana, the so-called acronym BUCAS. And some famous groups have arisen out of this movement of brokers trying to give employers a better deal, like the Health Rosetta Group. And what's also interesting about Nelson is we were speaking before the start of this webinar. He shares a political edge that Jeff and I do. And I like to advertise that. Nelson may not, we'll see. But we're talking about a seventh of the economy, healthcare. And it's the worst example of a cartel. You have gigantically powerful interests, the hospitals, pharma, the doctors, public health, along with big business and finance, that are all oligopolizing markets, making it real difficult for entrepreneurs to break in, and therefore really hard on the payers, whether they be individuals or employers. So if you have a political bent to really reform the market, make things better for consumers, this is a good place to try your hand in the commercial space, try to make some money doing good. So with that, Jeff, I think I'll turn it over to Nelson, although, we may also want to, in the line of politics, let's remember that the world of politics did lose a mammoth figure today in Rush Limbaugh. And, Jeff, if you'll indulge me, 30 years ago, was it 30 years ago? In 1990, when my great aunt ran for Congress in Milwaukee, I was an intern on Capitol Hill, just getting my start in politics. And I had to learn in a hurry how to answer issues. And on the drive up to Wisconsin, on the radio was Rush Limbaugh. And I learned pretty quickly that here's a guy that gave talking points by the dozen every minute. And he made my work and the work of a lot of activists easy, not just then, but up until now. Not everyone agrees with Rush, but for those of us in the free market space, traditional American values, we certainly are thinking about that loss today, and I'm sure Nelson does too. So, Jeff, that's my intro.
Yeah, and just on that topic, love him or hate him kind of thing, what the guy was able to succeed in doing business-wise was just unbelievable. For sure, to build that empire from such a little nothing situation. It's a rare talent that could take it that far in that long consistency, for sure. But anyway, Nelson, let's talk a little bit about those Goliaths that you're out there slaying for us.
Jeff, Charles, thanks very much. We are involved in what we call and has been called a benefits revolution. And it is a revolution in many ways, but the bigger question is why a revolution? And it's because the situation is getting more and more dire. The free market isn't working because we don't have a free market in healthcare. And fortunately, there are a lot of good signs, a lot of good developments. The Congress passed and President Trump signed before he left office a bill requiring transparency on the part of, there's several bills actually, but one requiring transparency on pricing on the part of hospitals, transparency on the part of pricing for health insurance companies and for health plans, but also around compensation for benefit brokers. All of this is great. You see a lot of reports coming out of NPR, Washington Post, some other publications pointing up the problems regular people are having with healthcare, the outrageous out-of-pocket costs, the fact that these balance bills that employees go get their healthcare, they have insurance, and then they get a bill for $25,000 6 weeks after their surgery, and it's a total surprise to them. The problem is the hospitals are suing. these employees, these people, these patients with these huge balance bills. And sometimes they're not even huge. Sometimes they're $1,000, but these people can't pay them. And these hospitals are going after these employees. There was a story about a town in Arkansas, Pine Bluff, Arkansas, where it was common knowledge that if you had surgery at the local hospital, you would have a follow-up appointment. Well, of course, you say you need to follow up with your doctors after your surgery. Oh, no, this follow-up appointment was in court because you were going to be sued by the hospital for not paying that post-procedure bill. The problem with these stories and the problem with the realization by most Americans that this system isn't working very well for us in the public, patients, employees, employers, is that they see it as a free market system that isn't working. But what's the alternative? The only alternative that's being held out by Republicans or Democrats is single payer, government funded healthcare, which will eventually become government run healthcare, as it is in Canada, as it is in the UK, in Germany, et cetera. So we are faced with this rising dissatisfaction and rising anger at our current healthcare system. The problem is the only apparent alternative to the status quo is government run healthcare. And as someone who has worked in public policy, who was active in the fight against Hillary Care, which was socialized medicine back in the early 90s. So we won that battle. But many of the groups that were aligned with us against Hillary Care, the doctors, the insurance companies, have changed their opinions. Now I saw a study or a survey of physicians, 57% of doctors. Doctors used to be the bulwark against socialized medicine. They fought it, the AMA fought it tooth and nail. Now 57% of doctors are open to or actively supporting single payer because they see how the system is broken. It doesn't work very well for physicians. But I want to go back to why this has happened, because I think we have a narrow window to change the healthcare system and the delivery of healthcare and the financing of healthcare, or we're going to end up with single payer. And as a student of history, political science, political systems, no country has ever gone into a socialized medicine system and come out of it. That switch never gets turned off. So once we go to government funding of healthcare, we'll never go back to a free market system. Do we have a free market system today? Hardly, but at least it's not government run, even though it's heavily government influenced. So let's look at why this is a problem. What's going on here? Well, for decades, healthcare in the United States has been controlled and corrupted, but by what I call the healthcare bankers. Healthcare bankers, you say? Well, these are the so-called payers, the insurance companies, also known as the insurance carriers. The problem is these healthcare bankers are all about finance, but they don't deliver any healthcare. No one has ever gotten a vaccination from somebody that works at Blue Cross. No one has ever had surgery performed by an employee of Aetna. No one has ever had a broken bone set by an employee of Cigna. These are bankers busy with the financing of healthcare. The problem is, as a middleman between the patient, maybe their employer, but it's really for the patient, for the employee, a middleman between the employer and employee and the healthcare providers. Middlemen are supposed to bring value, add value to the process. The insurance companies, the healthcare bankers only extract value. They actually add cost that isn't necessary. the supply chain of healthcare is supposed to be more valuable because of their involvement, it is less valuable. The problem is, and Charles mentioned this a moment ago, employers have trusted the insurance companies, these healthcare bankers, to manage both the quality of healthcare and the cost of that care. And yet insurance companies do neither. Let me restate that. Insurance companies neither manage the quality of healthcare or the cost of healthcare. And I can prove it to you. The insurance companies' only real asset today are their networks of doctors and hospitals. Companies will tell you, oh, we're with Blue Cross because they have the best network in our area. Well, what does that mean? That means that everybody's in the network. Well, the networks were originally set up to provide cost benefits. In other words, if you want to be in our network, it's going to be a fairly narrow network of doctors and hospitals. If you want to be in our network, you're going to have to really work with us and negotiate a preferred rate on your services, on your procedures, on your hospital stays, whatever it is the doctor or the hospital is charging an employer, the employee, but paid for by the employer, what they're paying for. The problem is, employers said, oh, yeah, that narrow network is too narrow. My wife's gynecologist isn't in it. And that's the CEO of the company that's hired Cigna to run their health plan. So Cigna felt this pressure. They said, oh, we'll just make it a broad network. The problem is, if you understand economics, if everybody can be in the club, it's not very exclusive. And if it's not exclusive, I'm not going to pay a lot to be in it. Which clubs command the highest prices? The exclusive clubs, the exclusive country club, the exclusive private club downtown for business people. We don't let everybody in. It's very exclusive, and people will pay for that exclusivity. Well, doctors and hospitals aren't going to negotiate lower rates when everybody's in the network. It's like the open market. It pretty much is the entire market. But more importantly, those network contracts that the insurance companies sign with their hospital and physician network members expressly forbids the insurance company from favoring one doctor over another, one hospital over another. And the idea of steering a member of the health plan to one doctor or one hospital over another, expressly forbidden by contract. Well, what's the problem with that? Well, need I say that 50% of doctors are below average? Tautological, yes. 50% of doctors are below average. There are excellent doctors who do the best work. And there are doctors who should not be practicing medicine, but they are. You don't know who they are necessarily. I wouldn't if I wasn't in this business, but I do know who those doctors and those hospitals are. So do the insurance companies. They know the best doctor to do a total knee replacement. They also know the doctor who does total knee replacements who has 4 malpractice suits. Now, not all malpractice suits are legitimate. People can sue a doctor and often do, usually when they have a bad bedside manner. But there are doctors who earn their malpractice suits. They're deserved. In fact, only 2% of doctors in the United States account for 39% of all malpractice suits. Now, I'd like to know who those doctors are. The insurance companies know who they are. They know the hospitals that have a high infection rate. They know the hospitals that are not practiced and experienced enough in major surgeries, but they let patients go there for those surgeries regardless. They let patients go to bad doctors because their contract prohibits them from steering a patient away from a bad doctor towards a good doctor, away from a bad hospital toward a good hospital. The insurance companies are contractually forbidden to manage quality. In fact, it's so bad that the insurance companies have basically forced the members of these health plans to play Russian roulette with their health. They go on the directory on the health insurance company's website, they find a doctor. Is it a good doctor or a bad doctor? Who knows? Maybe they're a great doctor. Maybe they don't. Spin the cylinder on the gun, pull the trigger, see what happens. Maybe they get the great hospital, the hospital that does a lot of open heart surgeries. Maybe they end up at the hospital that only does 3 open heart surgeries a year, which statistically documented puts that patient at great risk of infection, bad outcomes, or even death. The insurance company has this data, they won't use it. So that's quality. They're not managing quality. Well, what about cost? Surely they're managing cost because after all, they're taking in money, and if they don't spend it on healthcare, they spend less on the healthcare, they make more money. Well, that sounds logical and reasonable, but the truth is counterintuitive. Insurance companies are facing incredibly perverse incentives. Their incentives are totally misaligned with the employers they work for. The companies that put their employees, their employees' health and their dollars, the company's dollars, in the hands of these insurance companies. So we see how they don't manage care, the quality of care. But when the insurance company takes in money, it used to be that they could be very efficient and they could run up their margins. We've seen health insurance companies with 40 to 50% medical loss ratio, which meant they were spending only 60 or 50% of every dollar taken in on healthcare, which means that insurance company was very profitable. Well, when Obamacare, you may boo and hiss, when Obamacare was passed, the Affordable Care Act, which is, of course, possibly the most ironic name for a law ever. When the Affordable Care Act was passed, and I don't understand how the government did this to an industry that is not a monopoly industry, perhaps a near monopoly, but not a monopoly. They fixed the profit margins of the insurance companies. If you have a large company, usually above 50 or 100 employees, depends on the state. If you have a large company you're insuring, you can only make 15% profit. That's gross profit, not net, gross. If you have a small group, under 100 or under 50, depending on the state, you're allowed to make 20% gross profit. But out of that gross profit, they have to pay all of their administrative expenses. They have to pay commission to the insurance brokers that sell their programs. They have all the overhead, all of the additional operating costs of a large company, which means that 20 to 15%, let's just say it averages out to maybe 17%, a lot more small groups than there are large groups. That 17% gets, by the time they've paid all of their expenses, about 4.5% net profit for an insurance company that makes billions of dollars. 4.5%. Well, that's not bad. The oil companies have around a 5% profit margin. But here's the problem. The only way the insurance company can make more profit, they can't be more efficient. They've already done that. They've already pushed all of their margins as low as they can. So now they're at 4.5% net profit. How do they earn more profit for their shareholders? Because remember, the CEO's job at an insurance company is not to lower the cost of healthcare for his employer clients or improve the quality of care for those members of their health plans. The CEO's job is singular. It's to increase share value, increase the value of the insurance company's stock to benefit their shareholders. Period. Paragraph. So when the insurance company has a 4.5% profit margin and they can't increase the margin, the only way they can make more profit is to increase their revenues. Well, how do you increase revenue if you're an insurance company? What is revenue for an insurance company? Most of the revenue they have is the premium, the cost of the insurance paid by, to some extent, individuals who have individual plans, but the vast majority of the revenue comes from employers who buy a Cigna plan or an Aetna plan or a Blue Cross or a Humana plan, and they pay monthly premiums to the insurance company. So if you want to raise revenue, you really have to raise premiums, the cost of the insurance paid by the employer and the employee. And the easiest way to raise the cost of premiums is to raise the cost of healthcare. Because insurance, health insurance, pays for healthcare. If the cost of healthcare goes up, then the cost of the insurance has to go up. Those premiums have to go up. So let me ask a question. If the insurance companies were working to control and reduce the cost of healthcare, wouldn't you assume that at some time over the last 60 years, there would be some years where the cost of healthcare held steady or actually went down? Fair? But every year since 1960, healthcare costs have increased annually, every year. If the insurance companies are trying to control the cost of healthcare, they're really bad at it. But they're not bad because they're not trying. While the cost of healthcare has gone up every year, so has the cost of insurance. Since 1999, insurance premiums for employers have tripled. Since 1999, premiums have tripled. Healthcare costs have gone up dramatically as well, which is what drove the premiums up. Here's the thing, if a CEO of an insurance company decided that 2021, we're actually going to lower the cost of healthcare for our employees or our employer clients. Now, do they know how to do that? Well, I know how to do that. Our advisors around the country are doing it every day for employers around the country. So that CEO says, let's reduce the cost of healthcare in 2021. And they do so. Well, when they show the employers the results from this year, they're going to have lower healthcare costs, which means next year, what has to happen? The premium has to go down. They can't increase it. They have to reduce it, which means that CEO is responsible for reducing revenue. And I don't care what your profit margin is, 4.5 or some other, that profit margin on a smaller number is a smaller number. That CEO is reducing shareholder value. He's taking revenue and profit down. As a result, that CEO won't be CEO for very long. Insurance companies are in the business of increasing shareholder value. Because of their financial incentives, they are not going to work to reduce the cost of healthcare. And the evidence supports that. Healthcare costs have risen every year since 1960. Premiums have gone up every year since 1999. I haven't gone any further back than that to check, but for the last 20 years, every year, premiums have gone up. The status quo healthcare system for employers is inherently flawed. They keep giving their health plans and their healthcare spend, their healthcare budget to the health insurance company and says, look, take care of this, be a good steward, lower the cost of my healthcare, at least keep it level, and take care of my employees' health by ensuring they get high quality care. And the insurance companies do neither. And it's not just the insurance companies alone that are a problem here, too. I just want to inject something. Some of you will remember that Dwight David Eisenhower, the former commander of Allied forces in World War II, and then the United States president for 2 terms in the 50s. As he was leaving office, he started talking about and warning against the military-industrial complex. The fact that the military, as a purchaser of tanks and jeeps and weaponry and bombs and airplanes, had a symbiotic relationship with the industrial part of our economy, the manufacturers who made those planes and jeeps and bombs and guns and everything else that the military consumes. And Eisenhower warned against the collaboration between the military and industry to spend more on the military than we need to spend. And I'm a strong military advocate. My political hero is Ronald Reagan, who said peace through strength. I believe that. But when you read deeply into military procurement, you find out it's abysmal. There's tremendous waste. And there's tremendous waste because nobody is watching the price. Well, let me introduce you to another complex, the medical insurance complex, or the healthcare insurance complex. Remember, insurance isn't healthcare. As a good friend of mine, David Contorno, likes to ask, if you have Geico insurance and you wreck your car, you may call Geico to tell them about the wreck, but do you take your car to Geico to get it fixed? No, Geico provides insurance to pay to get your car fixed. You take it to an auto repair shop, a collision repair shop, not to the insurance company. Insurance companies don't do healthcare. The medical providers, the healthcare providers, the doctors, the nurses, the hospitals, the freestanding surgery centers, the imaging centers, they do healthcare. The pharmaceutical companies, whole nother story, but they do healthcare. They provide the products and the services of healthcare. The problem is we have health insurance companies working hand in hand with the hospitals and not checking prices. Why? Because the insurance company needs healthcare costs to go up. So they're not going to ride herd on their hospitals. Why not? Well, 2 reasons. One, they need to see healthcare costs go up. The second, though, remember those networks we were talking about? Well, when you are about the breadth of your network, how many doctors, how many hospitals, oh, we've got all the hospitals in our network. All of a sudden, the network, the insurance company, needs the hospital more than the hospital needs the network. I'm in Nashville. We see it every several years with Vanderbilt University Medical Center, which is the 800-pound healthcare gorilla in our market. And Vanderbilt announces that we are going to have to withdraw from the Blue Cross network, and Tennessee is a pretty strong Blue Cross state. We're going to have to withdraw, Vanderbilt says, from the Blue Cross network because Blue Cross is unwilling to provide us with reasonable reimbursements to allow us to function and be an ongoing concern. And then Blue Cross has their press conference and says, oh, we're very concerned about Vanderbilt University Medical Center's position on this, but we're working closely with them to negotiate a reasonable price that meets the needs of our policyholders, but also provides sufficient reimbursement to the hospital. And the kabuki dance continues until they hold a joint press conference and they link arms and they sing Kumbaya and everything is back to normal. It's just Vanderbilt flexing its muscles to force Blue Cross to, maybe give them a little bit better rate here or there. It's a kabuki dance. It's a charade. It's theater. So this medical industrial complex is a real problem. But unlike the insurance companies, which we can disintermediate, $20 business school word for cutting out the middleman, we can disintermediate the insurance company. We can't disintermediate the hospitals. So they have to be treated separately and with not with kid gloves, but we have to recognize that we need to find ways the hospitals can be profitable without gouging employers. So if we want to return to a real free market in healthcare, it's going to require an alternative funding system than the insurance companies and the health insurance bankers. We have to divorce healthcare from insurance. We have to divorce healthcare from this artificial funding mechanism that is skewed and disincentivized to serve the real interests of the employers and the employees. When the cost of healthcare keeps going up when it doesn't have to, it can and should come down. And for the next gen benefits advisors that we train and work with around the country, they are bringing down the cost of healthcare. The most effective lever to drive this change, and it won't surprise any of you who are free market oriented, is the payer's checkbook. But I mean the real payer, the employer's checkbook. If you take that checkbook away from the insurance company and you allow the employer to exercise fiduciary oversight, supply chain management of healthcare, which simply means we're going to watch and manage the quality and the cost of healthcare, then prices come down, quality goes up. Let me reverse that. Quality goes up and cost comes down. The problem is employers have a bit of a Stockholm syndrome with the insurance companies. They've been held captive for so long, they've come to believe their captives are good and they take care of them. Blue Cross is good. Well, Blue Cross has a $1 billion advertising budget, $1 billion marketing budget. Of course, we think they're good. Why don't C-suites in the United States, CEOs and CFOs in particular, take control of their healthcare spend? For most companies, it's now their number 2 operating cost in the whole company, behind payroll. It's never lower than number 3 in terms of operating costs. So why are employers, why are CEOs and CFOs so hesitant to take control of their healthcare? The reason is what I call healthcare's big lie. And this big lie has been told by the insurance companies and the big brokers who are co-conspirators with the insurance companies. And they tell this big lie to the CEOs and CFOs. And they've told it loudly enough, often enough, that employers buy it. They believe it. It's an article of faith with them. So what's this big lie? Pretty simple. The big lie is you can't control the cost of healthcare. Don't try. Don't waste your time. We, the insurance company, will try and we'll do our best, but you really can't manage the cost of healthcare. Well, what CEO or CFO in their right mind are going to spend any time thinking about the cost of healthcare when they've been told you can't control it? Any good CEO or CFO is going to say, well, fine, can't control it. I'm going to put it in the back of my head and forget about it because I do have things I can control, and that's where I want to put my attention. The problem is, as I said, this is a big lie. you can control the cost of healthcare. What is required is getting the insurance company out of the way, because they will not control the cost or quality of healthcare. And you allow highly trained benefit consultants, advisors who understand market disciplines. They understand supply chain management. They understand how to provide alternative funding strategies to these companies. And you get the insurance company out from between the employer, the real payer, and the healthcare providers, the doctors and the hospitals, et cetera. When that happens and market disciplines are applied to healthcare, here's what happens. The quality of care goes up dramatically. For the employees, the patients, medical outcomes improve dramatically. And in the plans that our benefit advisors are putting into these companies around the country, in many cases, the employees who used to have a $1,500, $2,500, $3,000, even $5,000 or $6,000 out-of-pocket deductible. In other words, you pay that deductible before the insurance company pays $1. There's also a co-insurance that's required of employees. And so they'll have to pay 10 or 20% of the bill. Once the insurance company does start paying it, they still have to pay 10 to 20% until they get to a maximum out of pocket. Obamacare has set it, I think it's at like $8,250 right now, maybe a little higher. So the employee is going to pay $8,000 out of pocket regardless, but they're going to pay $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 out of pocket before the insurance company pays a penny. In most of our plans, there is zero out of pocket for the employee. Their health care is free. They pay their insurance premium, but their health care is free.
Nelson, I'm going to jump in here real quick because I know you can keep cooking, but we're down at the end here where I want to open it up for some Q&A. So let's do that if that's okay.
Certainly.
That was great. I mean, and I really hate to even cut you off there because it was so good, but you've, raised a lot of great issues, and, it's sad that it's so obvious what to do, but yet no one really wants to do it because the people that have to do it have no vested interest in the right things being done. It's not to their advantage. So if anybody has a question, if you'll do me a favor and use the little raise hand icon would be fantastic. And I know we've got some doctors in here yet tonight too, so I'd like to kind of get their take on it as well. Who's up to be the second person asking a question? Okay, here we go. Here's a doctor right here. Dr. Campbell, I think I saw your hand up.
Hey, yes. Thank you. And, the content you're providing is kind of what I've been trying to articulate, although you clearly bring it together so much better than I ever could. But it's funny because out in the when you go to these think tanks and there's so many moneyed interests that your discussion, which you just had, is just not there. But it's so sensible. So let me ask you a question. I'm working on a proposal to somehow create an alternative insurance product that has incentives aligned with the company and with the patients. And we're trying to do a demonstration project. And it seems like the brokers are the missing piece. The brokers who are trained the way you describe, we're looking to maybe offer a product to small businesses that's 30% under what Blue Cross Blue Shield and Aetna and Cigna offers, and use price transparency to steer them to the more moderately priced, affordable health centers, and let the company and the employees reap the benefits of that. What are your thoughts on that kind of a pilot project for CMS innovation?
Well, you're on the same track that our benefit advisors are on, our healthcare consultants. It's about incentivizing the employees to do the right thing. So if they want to go out and squander their money, they're going to have to pay dearly out of pocket, $5,000, $6,000, their own money. If they follow the guidance of a care navigator, usually a nurse in our plans, then their out of pocket is waived. There is no cost. And so what's happening to basically to your point is the employee is making the savings happen by doing the right thing, by going to the low cost. Doctors really aren't the pricing problem here. Even surgeons, right? There might be a couple of $1,000 difference. It's not the surgeons, it's not the anesthesiologist, it's not the specialists, certainly not the primary care doctors that are driving the increase, the inflation in healthcare. It's the hospitals. It's the facility fee for the surgery, not the doctor, not the anesthesia, certainly not the appliance, although there's plenty of markup in that. It's the facility fees. So if you can get them going to the high quality doctors and using the high quality, low cost healthcare facilities, the plan saves money, the employees get better health care, and the employees get their health care for very little out of pocket or no out of pocket. So I think you're absolutely on the right track.
Yeah, we'd love to invite you to maybe be involved with this project in some way, and just advisory, or share your ideas and your tell us when we're doing the right things and when we're doing the wrong things. We're looking to get about 750,000 lives and try a project. We'll get ERISA waived so that we can just do whatever we want without the insurance industry trying to snag us with a lawsuit, and just see what we can say.
Well, I'm happy to have a conversation with you about that. I'm always looking for more innovation, and people like Jawad Arshad, who I see is with us. I mean, innovation is how we are going to change things. The status quo doesn't work. How do we change the status quo? How do we innovate to make things work for the employer, the payer, the employee, the patient, and the hospitals and the doctors? It has to work for everybody. Free market, it does. Problem is, we're not in a real free market right now.
Thank you so much, and just keep delivering your message whenever you can. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you for demonstrating in real time why we are the disruptors intersection, because there we are watching sausage be made, and that's exactly what we're trying to make happen. It's great. Well, let's hear now from a filmmaking documentarian about healthcare with the hit movie Paul Roberts. I see your hand up.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah, and this is more of a philosophical question, maybe something to ponder, maybe you have a response, but it seems to me, we talk about facility fees and shareholder greed, and consolidated medical care, with these large insurance conglomerates. That's kind of the I guess just playing devil's advocate for a minute. How do we prevent kind of going there in the free market healthcare system? How do we keep things value-based and not go toward that which we oppose from a philosophical perspective? I don't know if the question makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does, and it's an honor to speak with you, Paul. Great work. I have heard. I have to admit, I haven't seen the documentary, but I have heard nothing but good things about it. So congratulations and thank you for that effort. One of the principles in what we call next gen benefits is value-based medicine. So it's and evidence-based medicine. It's about what works, and it's about incentivizing the providers in the same way we want to incentivize the patient to do the right thing. So we've got to get away from fee for service. We've got to get more towards accountable care. I don't necessarily mean accountable care organizations, although they have some merit, but the idea that the healthcare provider has a stake, a financial stake, in keeping their their patients healthy. Direct primary care is a great example of that. When your patients are capitated, their compensation to you is capitated, you are incentivized to keep them out of your office. And you do that by keeping them well, because if you don't keep them well, they're going to be in your office or they're going to be on the phone with you. So it's about aligning incentives, and value-based and evidence-based medicine, I think, play a major role in that. Good question. Thank you.
Very good. Charles, well, I'm going to give you the privilege of asking the last question.
Well, I started with a bit of a political angle in this intro, Jeff, and I might end one, and I hope this softball, you hit it, Nelson. In your past political life, you ran the Andrew Jackson Center. And when you said you want to get the healthcare bankers out of the system, I think both you and I know where I'm going with this. Jackson said, "I will rout out you den of vipers," to the international financiers at the national bank that so many early founders opposed for our first 100 years. Is there a similarity in this grand effort around, the end the Fed effort of the politicians of the free market variety, and the benefit disruptors trying to get rid of the healthcare bankers to solve healthcare's problems?
It's a great comparison, and I think there's a lot of validity. Keep in mind, we only have 5 big, and there are a couple of that are fairly big, but the BUCAs, Blue Cross United, Cigna, Aetna, and Humana, and Humana is not actually fully national. They're a little bit more regional. There are only 5 of these big insurance companies. If you want to add in, I can think of 2 more. Maybe you have 7. Do we think that they collude? Do we think that they conspire to control price? Yes, absolutely they do. And so I think there is this. We understand that we have to reduce the role of these bankers, of these healthcare bankers, and it's black and white. If you want to control your healthcare budget, your healthcare spend, and your healthcare plan, you must get rid of the insurance company. So it really is less about the financing, although that's central to it, but more about control. Who controls the healthcare plan? The insurance company that's perversely incentivized to allow healthcare costs to go up and not manage the quality of care, or the company itself that has every reason to manage the costs and every reason to manage the quality of care. So I think you're right. At some point, it's a battle. And let me say this, the insurance companies aren't bad people. I'm reminded of the line from Who Killed Roger Rabbit. Jessica Rabbit, very curvy, says, "I'm not bad. I'm just drawn this way." Well, the insurance companies aren't bad. They're just incentivized this way. So we just have to recognize the incentives and act accordingly.
Very good. Again, it comes down to us getting back in control for us to make the things steer where we need it to go. So on that note, Nelson, I want to thank you for being a part of this today.
Well, thanks very much to both of you for having me on and giving me this opportunity to share what we're doing and what really is going on in healthcare and some of the changes that can be made. Appreciate what you guys do.
How can we reach you and the Ascendant Conference if that's where folks can find you, or wherever?
Well, so I run the Next Gen Benefits Network, which is a national aggregation of these next gen advisors all over the country, from Seattle down to Florida, from Vermont down to New Mexico. And so the best way to reach me is by email at Nelson, Nelson, at insurancebottomline.com. insurancebottomline.com. And would love to hear from any of you. And